Hey, what's up you guys? It's Joelle, and today's video is all about sorority recruitment and my rush experience. And I tried filming this once already. I've just sounded so sickly in it. I'm still like getting over a cold. So I decided to refilm it. And my camera might die during this, so I'm really hoping to just power through. But anyways, I just went through sorority rush here at Dartmouth, and I know Dartmouth has a lot of stereotypes about Greek life, just through Animal House, which was based off of my school, LOL80, and just like articles that have come out. There's a lot of like ideas of what Greek life is like at Dartmouth, so I just wanted to give you my experience and what it's been like for me in general going through it. Starting off, a lot of people who know me might have been surprised that I rushed just because I'm not the typical sorority girl stereotype that you guys might see, but I really wanted a really strong community of women in my life here at Dartmouth, just because I went through last year and didn't have as many girlfriends as I did guy friends. I had a really solid group of girlfriends that I loved, but I really also just wanted to be pushed and like have to meet people outside my, you know, my little realms of dance and Christian community and my floor and that sort of thing. So I thought Rush would be a perfect place to do that, to have like a female dominated social space that I felt really comfortable in and that I could meet a lot of people through. Sorry, I just had to switch cameras. I was right, my camera died. So anyways, so how sorority rush works at Dartmouth is different from a lot of other schools, because rush here, I would say, is probably more inclusive and also just smaller, but also simultaneously bigger. There's a large fraction of the student population at Dartmouth participates in Greek life. It's about 60% of the eligible class. So you cannot rush at Dartmouth until you're a sophomore, which I love, because freshman year, you have to spend the entire year just getting to know people around you, regardless of what Greek house you're affiliated with. So you really just find people that you click with, not necessarily because you're around them all the time. So you rush your sophomore year. I just went through rush. I did not shake out anywhere, but that was just my decision. I have a lot of friends who did both, and they work really well simultaneously. But I'm just focusing on the rush experience. And for girls, it is a week at the beginning of your sophomore year, or you can rush later in your time at Dartmouth. You can rush in the winter as well, or your junior, fall, or winter. And how it works is that there's a week of 3 rounds and then bid night. So there's round 1 and round 2, pref night and bid night. And it's sort of intense, just like this one crazy week, but it's actually really fun. Your first 2 days is round 1, and that's, for us, that was a Saturday and a Sunday, 5 hours each. You're gonna visit each house and stay about an hour and have a 15-minute break in between. So it's kind of intense of just going and like basically you go to each sorority and like girls like grab you. They just make sure that you have someone to talk to, and you rotate through around 5 or 6 girls, I think, throughout the hour, just talking, and they'll show you different parts of the house, like the physical space, and you just get to know, you know, like the sort of vibe of the sorority, the kind of people that are in it, and you just talk to people. They get to know you, you get to know them. Mostly superficial conversations like your major or what you do on campus and that sort of thing, which can get kind of exhausting because it's like so much small talk that a lot of people hate. I honestly didn't mind it, and I really appreciate this because you have to go and see every house. I didn't know so much about so many sororities. And then after that, you pref your top 4, which are all considered like your first choice, and then you have preference 2 and 3, and those are like the bottom 2 that you wouldn't want as much. There's 6 houses that go through Pan-Hellenic recruitment and then 2 that don't. So you visit 3 houses each day. Round 2, you get called back to 0 to 4 houses, and those are ones that you mutually match with. So basically you pref your houses and they pref you, and sort of like by this computer algorithm, they find out which houses you mesh with, and you visit those same houses for an hour each. You dress as like a little bit nicer, but still not really. Like honestly, for the first day, it's supposed to be really casual. I straight up wore like Adidas sweats and like an oversized t-shirt and like an Adidas track jacket. Round 2 is a little more nice. I think I just wore like a nicer shirt and jeans and like heels or something. Sort of same process. You talk to fewer girls, which is nice. It's like a lot more low-key because the first round is so crazy, so many people in the house at once. It's really exciting, but this one you get to like sort of ask more real questions, like what do you like about the sorority, like what do you not like, and it's sort of for you to learn about the different houses and figure out which one you would like to go into. And after that, you pref your top 2 and your bottom 2, I believe. And from there, process of elimination goes to pref night. Same process of like mutual matching. Pref night is often indicative of which house you'll get a bid from. So if you get called back to 1 house on pref night, you are guaranteed a bid at that house. However, you get called back to 2, and from there you could end up in one of the 2 houses, but oftentimes it's more your decision. Like after that, whichever house you pref will be the one that you get a bid from, but that's not always the case. So some girls can end up really disappointed by not getting a bid from the house that they really liked. Prep night is a lot more formal. You'll go spend another hour and you dress up like a little nicely, and you only talk to like 1 or 2 girls while you're there, and it's normally someone that you're friends with that you've like talked to before. You feel really comfortable just to ask questions, like very real questions about what it's like to be in that sorority, because you're not really trying to impress them. They're kind of like trying to get you to want to go to that sorority at that point. So it's nice. And then bid day is next day. Bid day can be a lot of tension. Same with prep night, just because girls are really highly anticipating, you know, where they're being called back to, and a lot of times it can feel like, oh, like if I didn't get called back to the house I wanted, like what's wrong with me? Like what did I not do that they were looking for? So it can be a really stressful, like scary time, honestly, for a lot of girls here. I was very fortunate to have a pleasant rush experience, but going to get your card, like your bid card from your Rokai or the Panhellenic office, your Rokai is like sort of like the leader who takes your little group out and just makes sure you're having a good rush experience. Can be so scary. Like I wasn't very emotionally tied to like my rush experience, but going and getting that card, oh my gosh, I saw so many girls that were like either really happy or really not, and I was like, what is going on? Like on campus, it's so crazy. But yeah, you get your bid card, and that's like where you'll end up. And then oftentimes like that night is like sort of like a fun like welcome to the house night, so you get like instructions on like where to go. We have to like, normally like there's like a theme and you dress up with a theme, and like, you know, different sororities will do different things, but you meet up with your sisters ultimately in the whole house and just like have a lot of really fun activities and just like a fun night of being introduced to your house. So a lot of it is just like celebratory of like, you made it into the house. That like rush experience can be really stressful and tough, but you're here now and you have this whole great support system. Now, sort of going more into my experience with rush, I think I came in with expectations for the worst possible scenario, so I just thought it'd be terrible. My sister went through rush. She's in a sorority affiliated at Dartmouth, but she hated rush. She was like, it is a week of hell, of just like girl flirting and just like the most superficial conversations, and it feels really like you're being like shuffled through people just to sort of like be evaluated, which is like a really sucky feeling. But honestly, I did not feel that way when I went through rush. I was pretty excited to go and meet sisters at each house because I didn't know much about each house. I really wanted to get a sense of like what it was like, so I enjoyed it. But I'm also extroverted, so I don't mind being around a lot of people for a long time. It is tiring. I definitely still got tired, but I thought it was nice, and I had like some friends at every house, so I didn't feel too uncomfortable. There were definitely moments when I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing here. I know very little about this house, but like at least I see one person that I know, or like in the group of girls traveling with me to these different houses, like I know some people. But it was a lot, honestly. Like at times, like I said, I'm not like the most like classic sorority girl. I'm also not like the most classic Dartmouth girl, just in general. And I think part of me was like, does that work for or against me in terms of being wanted by a house? For example, like when we all showed up on the first day, it was supposed to be casual, and you know, everyone's like low-key trying to look cute, so like they were all like put together, like nice jeans and like a cardigan or like a nice blouse or something. And like I said, I showed up in sweats and like my dance clothes, and like I felt like I stuck out like a sore thumb. But I was also just like, this is me. They told us to come how we were, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna come how I am, because why would I want to be wanted by a house that's not wanting what I look like on an everyday basis, or like the kind of vibe that I have? So that was just like my take on it. Like I really wanted to be authentic going through this. Another thing that's like interesting at Dartmouth is, I don't know, I feel like people don't talk about this enough, but the fact that there is definitely like a social strata of the houses. People like oftentimes will want like the more A-side houses, which is like a terrible concept of just more desirable Greek houses, and then like the B-side houses that are like less desirable. And like that really pisses me off, just because I think that really ties to people's identity, and like they get a lot of their identity and validation from the house that they go to. And I think that's like really terrible, because you should go into a house that genuinely fits the kind of person you are and the vibe that you get, not what you think the house will like turn you into once you join. And also it pisses me off just because I've noticed, like, not that this is like a definite thing, but I just noticed a higher correlation of Asians and minorities in the houses I've considered B-side. And I don't want to say whether that's like correlation or causation, but I think the fact that like to go at Dartmouth, I've noticed that for people to go to a sorority that's like more Asian or whatever is often considered like a bad thing, which pisses me off for so many reasons, but that's like a whole nother thing I could talk about. But that's just something that I did notice going through like this rush experience as like a woman of color. Overall though, I did have a really positive rush experience, because I was very fortunate to have a lot of friends who reached out to me from different houses beforehand and whatnot. My older sister, like I said, she's a senior, so a lot of her friends were always looking out for me, which I was so thankful for. Thank you, Micah, for having your friends look out to me, and thank you to everyone who just sort of like helped me like make sure that I was having a good rush experience, because I was so lucky to have that. But overall, like my experience of just going through rush was very good, and my decision making was very hard because of that. So next, sort of going into the factors that led into my decision, I was called back to 2 houses that ultimately like I really love, but they're completely opposite in my mind, just in terms of like vibe, reputation, and that sort of thing, and just like the kind of experience I would have there. One of them is definitely more like high-key, like kind of has the reputation of like more party girls, much less diverse. I will be very real with you guys, it also has a reputation of being like sort of snootier girls that like really like the fact that they're in the sorority and are like can be kind of stuck up about it, which I think is super unfortunate, because that was just not my experience when I was going to see these girls. The other house I really loved also. It's a lot of like really sweet, like down-to-earth girls, highest Greek house GPA, average GPA, definitely like more diverse. There was a lot more women of color in that house that I met and talked to, and like their reputation for, like is not really about like their party life. It's more about like their like philanthropy, their grades, like that sort of thing. And it's like a lot of sweet people that like I think just like I fit in with more naturally. Like it was a lot easier for me to be more comfortable there, just because it was more familiar with like sort of my social scene. So making the decision between those two was very hard, but this is sort of where my experience deviates from the norm, where my rush experience was heavily influenced by my faith. Like I am Christian, for those of you guys who don't know. So the whole time through rush I was praying about it. I was praying about it over the summer, just like which Greek house should I be like looking into and that sort of thing. And then also during my time here, I was praying a lot about just like ending up at the right house, because I know it would play a large part in just like the people that I get involved with and like what I'm able to do for that house as well. And I really wanted to end up somewhere that like God wanted me, essentially. So I was praying a lot about these houses, and like these two were the two honestly that like I felt like God was leading me towards. To be completely honest, like if I were just taking my own opinions into account, I probably would have not ended up necessarily at these 2 houses. There was another house that I clicked with super well and that I really enjoyed, but I just did not feel like God was calling me there, so I did not prep it, which was really hard for me. But honestly, my thought going through this was like, God, you know me better than I do, so I will trust your judgment in like whichever house I end up in. So it came down to these 2, and it was hard because over the summer I felt really called to this house that was like more low-key, really sweet people that like I may not know as well or that sort of thing, but I'd be very comfortable with, and like I felt really called to that house. But then going through the rush process and like having a lot of things like later like words over the summer and that sort of thing, I also felt like this pull to this house, and I was like, God, like what are you, like why aren't you making it clearer to me? Like this is so frustrating. So I was like praying before going into each house, just being like, give me a sign of which one is the place to go. And ultimately like I felt really good about this house, which surprised me because of like their reputation as being like a bigger party house, or just like the fact that I might not be as comfortable there or whatnot. Like that was a big draw, and I think a large part of that was like when I was going through rush, I really wanted to think about not only what I would get from that house in terms of like sisterhood, philanthropy, opportunities, but also like what I'm able to bring to the house. And even though I was not gonna be necessarily the most comfortable there, I really felt like I was able to be something that was not existing. So because there are people there who are not like me, I'd be able to fill that gap. So ultimately I did decide to choose that house, but there's so many factors that I think I would really recommend to take into account when choosing a Greek house, because obviously my experience was not the norm with being like super like faith-based. Honestly, like the conversations you have with people during this rush process is super important. Honestly, after going through rush the first round, I felt like I could go to any of these houses and feel comfortable just because of the quality of conversations I had there. So for that reason, my conversations didn't really narrow things down, but for a lot of people they did. And just sort of like seeing like what people tend to talk about and like how they carry themselves in leading this conversation and that sort of thing, really important. Just for figuring out if you're gonna vibe with the people there. I hate to say this, but I would take reputation into account to an extent, because obviously you are going to find people at each house that like confirm or deny the stereotypes about that Greek house, but the reputation of like overall culture will definitely play a factor into your experience there. So even though like at my sorority has this like really ragey reputation, that sort of thing, obviously not everyone is like that. I've met a lot of people who are totally not like that, but like you definitely get like a vibe when everyone congregates like for meetings every Wednesday and that sort of thing, and that is sort of like a vibe that will carry throughout, and a lot of times that like can be indicated by the reputation of that house. So it is something to like think about ask about more, talk to girls about it who are in the house or out of the house. Another important thing to think about, the type of philanthropy this house does, and just like their involvement on campus and their presence on campus outside of like just being a social space, because like the events they do and that sort of thing can play a factor into how you spend your time. So think about that, as well as dues, which vary a lot between national and local sororities. Local sororities at Dartmouth, they do not have like a national head, so they can kind of do whatever they want. They have a lot less restrictions about like alcohol distribution, parties, boys, and that sort of thing, versus national, which tend to be more expensive. Both have pretty solid financial aid services, so you can definitely give financial aid. However, I have heard that national sororities are a lot more strict about that for some reason, which is why there's actually a move at Dartmouth for a lot of national sororities to go local, which is super interesting in my opinion, but that's something that you might want to take into account. Local versus national is another thing you might want to think about in terms of rushing, just because, like I said, local sororities can host parties. It's much more of like a female dominated social space at the equivalent of frats, which can all host parties, versus the national sorority, which doesn't have that, but they also have like the national backing of being like, you know, this like national community that you have like resources from. But you know, it depends on school to school, I think. I don't know how common local sororities are at other schools, but at Dartmouth they're very, very common, so that's something to definitely take into account. And then also, like I said, I think you should really think about not only what you're getting from the house, but what you're putting into it, and the ways that the house will not only enhance your life and like provide a support system, but also challenge you. And ultimately, in my decision, like the challenges presented by the sorority full of really excited, like really awesome girls that I just didn't know that well, was very attractive to me, because I really wanted to be pushed out of my comfort zone in my sorority, and I really wanted to be pushed into communities that I would not have otherwise been involved in. So it was intimidating coming in and having so many girls know each other already. There are similar social spheres and that sort of thing, and I was just not part of that. So just being like, you know what, I'm here to like learn, to make friends, to just like have this be a place that like I will make myself comfortable in, was really important to me. And like I said, I wanted there to be stuff that I could feel like I provided for the house, that I wasn't just sort of like going with the flow, and not in a sense of being like, oh, you're so lucky to have me, but in the sense of just being like, we all are trying to learn from each other, and we're all trying to, you know, just learn more about people and go through college and expand our horizons. So if I'm able to do that for you and you're able to do that for me, I think that's really awesome. So now, just talking about my time after Rush, like since I've been in the house, what has it actually been like? I've been so happy being in my house. It's been such an amazing community, and just realizing how into it the girls are. Like, people are so excited to have, you know, more people in their community. Like, they're all, the upperclassmen are all so welcoming to the babies, and I think a lot of the girls are really open to just getting to know each other, which I was afraid of. And sometimes, honestly, I can still feel like, oh, they all know each other, like what am I doing here? But it's been really good, and I really like a lot of the people that I've met and have just really enjoyed, you know, like feeling like I'm meeting so many people from all over campus, and walking around campus and seeing like, oh, we're in the same sorority now, like wow, I never would have interacted with you before, but now we have this connection. And Dartmouth just seems so much smaller. Like, it seems like my home a lot more now that I have this big community that is looking out for me. One thing I didn't realize though was just how much time my sorority would take. And everyone says the first term of being in your sorority will be the biggest time commitment, just because you're really trying to get to know the people, you're trying to get immersed in the community. But I didn't realize like every day there could be something like sorority related that I do, and I just don't have time to do that. And I honestly feel really bad that I'm not able to like dive in as much as I would like to. But I do try to stay involved in whatever ways I can. I try to go to as many events as possible and just reach out to girls in my sorority. And yeah, just being really proactive about that is tough. And I think especially the first few days after midnight, I was like, oh my gosh, my whole life is just like exploding with these new people and this new involvement that I have and this new commitment I made, which was overwhelming, not gonna lie. But now it's sort of like died down a little bit, and it feels so just like I have this space and community I can go to always, and that like I want to pour into equally. Also, like having bigs, I did not realize, you know, we always see the like social media posts of girls being like, oh my gosh, I love my bigs, they're the best. And I was like, what is a big? Like, what are you talking about? And just having that support throughout the first couple of weeks has been amazing, because we actually didn't know who our bigs were for the first week of being in our sorority. We just got them signed, and they would just like come do really cute things. They would like leave stuff in my room. They gave me a necklace for my sorority, and they gave me apparel for my sorority, and like wacky outfits to wear to like our parties and that sort of thing. But then we had big reveals last weekend, which was really fun, and just sort of getting to see like, wow, you were doing all this stuff for me, I didn't even know who you were. They left a beautiful sign on my door, and just were like so sweet and welcoming. My sorority also has like mamas. We have 2 girls that are like the new member educators educators, but they're mostly just like there if we ever need anything. But there's just so many people who are trying to support you and like really want to welcome you, and I think that's an awesome part of Rush. So despite the concerns I had of like not really knowing people and that sort of thing, I feel like it's all sort of been like broken down. Of course I still have my moments where I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, I'm in the sorority now that I never expected to commit to, and honestly, like, a lot of my friends, even from home, when they found out I was in the sorority, they're like, Joelle, like, is this like a joke? Like, are you pranking us with this? Because they never would have guessed it. But I think that's one of the things that I love about Dartmouth Rush is like you really just end up where you click with people and where you feel called to. Like I said, my experience is not always the most typical, but by being able to go to all these houses and just meet so many people, and by the Greek system being like so inclusive, I really just found a place that I didn't expect. The caveat to that though is that my year was the first year that not every girl was guaranteed a bid, which was very strange and unfortunate. I don't know if it'll stay like that normally, but typically every girl is guaranteed a bid from a Greek house. Even if it's not your top choice, you can be let into Greek like if that's what you want. Hopefully that's how it will go back to in later years. I'm not sure. And another caveat is just that for a lot of girls, like, it can be a really stressful time. I had a very fortunate experience of really enjoying it, but when you tie your identity to the Greek house that you are called back to, that's when things get really messy, and it can be a really tough time for a lot of people just being like totally broken down of like, I thought that like I was expecting this, or like what does this mean that I wasn't let into the house that I want, and like what is wrong with me? And I just really recommend that for any girl going through Rush anywhere that is not the case. That you are like so valuable and you have so many things to offer, and like whether it's logistical or just like maybe they're like could not accept enough people, never let it define who you are. And I know that's so easy to say when things are going well, but I really encourage people to like not let that be their identity, because there is so much life outside of Greek life, and like the sorority that you're let into, like you don't know the factors that are playing into like how they evaluate girls and call them back and that sort of thing. So just yeah, like I think that's my biggest piece of advice, is just to not let that define who you are, because you are so much more than like the Greek letters that you're able to wear like on a sweatshirt, you know. And there will be amazing girls at every house that you're able to have super deep connections with. So I just really encourage you that to look forward to that in your Greek life recruitment experience and what have you. So with that, this camera is dying as well, so I will leave you guys with that. If you guys have any more questions about Greek life in general, or just life at Dartmouth, please be sure to leave those down below, or tweet me. I might do another Instagram Q&A focused on Rush if you guys feel so inclined. So if you want a Q&A specifically about Rush, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. I hope you guys found this helpful, just in terms of going through Rush at Dartmouth, or life at Dartmouth if you're looking at Dartmouth or looking at Greek life in general. Yeah, please be sure to follow me on all my social medias if you'd like to keep up with my life more. Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, those are all linked down below as per usual. And I just want to say thank you to Audible for sponsoring this video. They've reached out to me and wanted to offer all of you guys a promotion of a 30-day free trial with a free book on Audible, which is an audiobook online program where you can sign in, make an account, get audiobooks, and have them connect with an app on your phone or on your computer so that you can listen to books just as you go throughout your day like music. So if you guys are interested in that, be sure to hit up www.audibletrial.com/Joelle. I believe that's the link. I'll have it linked down below as well, so you guys can get that free 30-day trial with a free book. I'm so excited for you guys to be able to have this opportunity, because I really appreciate books and reading, and during college it can be so hectic and hard to find time to read. So when you're working out, when you're like just walking around, being able to listen to a book I think is so important, because I feel like nowadays like literature is valued less with like TV, YouTube, ironic, lol, taking over people's lives. So just taking time to really reflect and listen to a good book. I'm really excited to provide that for you guys for free. I love you guys so much. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace. And photos that I've placed around here. I don't ever do work on my bed. I only sleep here because that's not good for training your brain to focus.